Does that help explain it a little bit more?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Can you actually manipulate and
Yes.
connect it right in VR, or
Yes.
or a desktop and then you view it in?
No, it's all of the analysis and all of the filtering is done immersively, because I could not abide by asking somebody to jump in and out of VR, because I myself get seasick very easily, and that would make me nauseous beyond belief. So yes, you can point to a section and bring it close to you. You can go down to the individual data point. So that's another benefit, is you can see the individual without losing the greater context of the whole. The section without losing the greater context. This is all very important. But yes, to be short and frank and to the point, all of this can be done immersively. Yes.
Thank you very much. It's actually a follow-up just to the right question before. So we all think, I guess, data as being neutral, but know that visualization certainly is not, but it's always an interpretation. And so I wonder, getting into immersive data analysis, would you say that that the temptation of interpreting data and make it more creative and experienceable would enhance the interpretation, or do you see a chance to just withdraw, like you have described, leaving interpretation more to the analysts? How do you deal with this problem of putting your own view into data analysis with these new technology forms?
Yeah, so I do strongly believe that that is an issue. And anytime that somebody does an analysis, they do bring their own, bias into it. But I think it is more of an issue when you're in 2D, because you're looking at a very high level sort of abstraction away from the data. So a scatter plot or a pie chart or a bar graph is showing an abstraction of the data. It's not showing each individual data point. So it's easier to insert a bias into that, because you're not looking at the source data, you're looking at an analysis or an abstraction of it that can be shaped through multiple different steps to tell the story you wish to tell. When the analysis itself is experiential and you're looking at the source data, sure, you can apply different algorithms to it, you can change different filters to tell a specific story, but it becomes much more difficult, because everybody's looking at the same source data. They're looking at the actual data points, and they're seeing the application of these algorithms or the application of these filters in real time as you're doing it. So we've found, and this is obviously still preliminary stuff, that people tend to come to more of a consensus of understanding simply because they're all starting from the same base level data set. They're not starting from, oh, well, these are the charts and graphs that I've done, then presenting the charts and graphs this other guy's done. Everybody starts at the base with the data, applies it and manipulates it to tell their story, but at least they're all starting from the same point versus starting from different points. And I don't think that we'll ever be able to remove personal bias from this. It really just comes down to at least being more transparent about that bias, which is what I think XR helps do. So.
From Suzanne to Susan.
Hello, Susan.
Hi. Thank you very much for your talk. It was really interesting. What happens when data visualization is part of, or the speed of data visualization is part of the overall value chain? So that the data has to be imported.
Yes.
It has to be converted, or it has to be reprogrammed. And then it has to arrive at the end point, everybody seeing the same thing.
Yes.
And then going one step further, what about the actual resolution or solutions to problems being presented immersively as a result of the visualization that you have just produced? What about speed? So if all of those things take a certain amount of time, and the value added of the solution, data solution that's being presented to the end client, let's say, is the time factor,
Right.
How does that work with what you do?
Yeah, that's actually one of the biggest value adds, is the speed, because it does, as you mentioned, take a great deal of time to even get the data to a place where you can import it, consolidate it, clean it, then project it into an environment. Or if you're using dashboards, it takes a long time to set up a dashboard, then it takes a long time for everyone to analyze this data. But the great thing about immersive technology is that it does make these analyses and these environments and this data accessible to everyone on your team. So I think the problem with what causes a lot of the slowdown now in organizations, at least from my experience, is that it has to always run through a data science team. It has to always run through a data analyst team. And so these people put their own bias into it, and they all tend to be the same sort of person with the same sort of background. They do their analysis. Then they put it all into a 45-page PowerPoint presentation of scatter plots. They then present this analysis to decision makers. Then they can come to the conclusion about what they want to do, what action they want to take. But if you sort of decentralize this and you give everyone a headset and allow them to access the data that's relevant to their daily decision making, and that data itself is being updated daily, which is what our platform does, the setup process takes a while, but once it is set up, then all of this can easily be done instantaneously by putting on a headset. Then you no longer have to run everything through that data science team. Then suddenly all of this data is accessible to everyone everywhere without having to wait for that whole sort of like data cycle to happen. So we found that it speeds up the process. It makes teams more likely and more willing to engage with data. Previously looking at dashboards, it's like, oh, well, we set up this dashboard for this marketing team. It's like no one looks at that because it's hard to contextualize and get meaning and take that data and say, oh, I understand what I'm supposed to do with it. But if it's set up in an environment, the whole idea behind it is that it's set up in such a way that the insights the team is looking for become immediately apparent to someone who's non-technical to a level like my own mother. Like we're really trying to make data universally accessible. So hopefully we're doing that. I feel like we're doing that. We still have a ways to go, but at least some of the stuff we've done the initial stuff we've done has been very successful. So
maybe we can start at the beginning. Like how you talked about decision makers.
yes.
How do companies approach you and saying, hey, we need your service? How do they even understand that they need your service?
Yeah, it's actually been very interesting. We've seen a lot of top-down interest. We've seen a lot of high-level executives, C-suite people reaching out directly to us. And I think this really goes back to the core problem I originally identified in the presentation, where the pain around data. And very forward-thinking, innovative leaders within particular industries understanding that, look, we've made a huge effort to collect data. We've made a huge effort to house this data, but we're not getting as much value out of it as we were either promised or that we anticipated or that we want. So they're looking actively for solutions to help solve that challenge on a high level. And reaching out to us for doing proof of concepts, and then if those are successful, then doing full implementations. But it just really did surprise me when I founded the company. I didn't think that it would be CEOs and such reaching out, but it truly has been that, and I think that really speaks to the core challenge that we're addressing.
So your customers really are, you're based in the US on the West Coast, yeah? So
Yes.
we're always
Real
envious of Americans
Angelino.
being much more pragmatic and just daring to try things out before they ask all the questions why things are not going to work, which Germans are usually doing. But it's great to hear that, it's yes, pilot cases, but also going beyond that already
Yes.
with what you're already reaching in terms of market penetration and projects.
Yes.
That's great to hear.
Yeah, it's been very
Another
exciting.
question from Thomas.
Yeah.
Hi.
Very interesting topic. So,
Yeah, of course.
Research shows like us as humans have good capabilities to remember something spatially and in the context of stories. So
Yes.
everyone probably heard about the memory palace and things like that. So I think there's huge potential in not just using it for analysis, but also for presentation of data, rather than going through pages of sheets and no one knows what it's supposed to say. You can make it like a immersive PowerPoint that's more interesting. Is your software already capable of producing like this kind of immersive data showcase with story elements in it?
Yes, it's so funny that you actually shouted out that memory palace research paper. I cannot tell you how many times I've cited that in grant applications. It actually, like the concept of a memory palace was one of the original ideas that drove me to want to found this company, because I do feel that, you know, spatial memory as humans is absolutely fantastic. So like, why not utilize that? And yeah, so to answer your question, our mission is to democratize insight. So if we're just building tools for data analysts and data scientists, we fail at that. We are absolutely building a data visualization tool for everyone. So we have features in it that allow you to capture either small videos or images, or to remotely collaborate or collaborate in the room. So we found that a lot of the times it is used to present information, to perform a group. It's funny, people will get in there together and do a group analysis. So it's not like I'm sharing the results of a final process. It's like we're going to get in here together and find the answer together, like a shared experiential journey, a data journey, I guess would be the way to describe it. But yes, it is both a tool for analysis, but also a tool for communication. Really, I think if I were to be pressed to describe it, I would describe it as a tool for communicating data broadly. Yeah.
Your question up in the middle.
Yeah, thanks. So coming from a VR background, from the more entertainment side, so there's been, over the last years, we've been talking a lot about finding the language for telling stories in VR.
Yes.
And like finding, you know, these little things, and like there had to be like a lot of adoption had to happen. And I imagine it is similar for you in data visualization, where we have these, as you started out, very strong things that we're used to, so bar charts, pie charts, graphs, scatter plots, whatever it is, heat maps. So I imagine like that there needs to be like a lot of groundwork done in that regard, finding these basic forms of visualizing data in a spatial environment as well. And I'd be curious if there's some trends that you're already seeing from your work, some basic concepts that you're applying.
Yes. So that was the biggest challenge when we started this company, is finding those initial environments. Like, well, first of all, identifying different broad categories of data, then designing a multidimensional environment in which to present this data, and then figuring out ultimately which of these industries and data sets have a most immediate application or adoption. Because you know, obviously we're a startup, we got to survive, so we can't build visualizations all the time for everyone. We have to sort of hone in on these specific things, as you said, use cases. So what we've done is we've developed 4 immersive environments. We've identified 4 of the most broadly applicable types of visualization. One of them is geospatial. That one's very inherent and very obvious. So a geospatial presentation of geospatial data. Then there's the data stadium that I described, where you're in the center and looking at abstract data points in a stadium format. We have a networking environment, which is nodes and relationships between nodes. That was the one that I showed on the slide, with visualizing Wi-Fi networks or Bluetooth networks. It can also visualize more abstract networks, like computer networks, that sort of stuff. And then lastly, a transactional environment, which is good for financial information. It's also good for, you know, stuff like purchasing, at which point you have a sale, and then an item that's being bought, or a property that's being bought and sold. So those are the 4 environments that we've really honed in on, the ones that we've developed, the ones that you know, I feel are most broadly applicable to the applications of the technology now. I think there will be more environments and more standardized ways to display them, and perhaps people will iterate on what we've done and make it a little better. I hope they do. But I think that can really answer the question, at least right now. These are what we've done, and these are the ways in which we've done it. So.
You have a Magic Leap grant. There may be other startups sitting in the audience
Yes.
wondering, and how in the hell do you get a Magic Leap grant? Do you have to fill in hundreds of pages of paperwork, or what exactly is it? How did that happen? And maybe if you can tell us, what are you doing with it then also?
Yeah. So the Magic Leap grant is through their Independent Creators Program. This is a fund that they put together to give money to developers to develop applications for their platform. I started out getting to know Magic Leap by going to a hackathon. It was in San Francisco, and it was sponsored by AT&T. So I had this idea of like, oh, well, I'll visualize, you know, cellular coverage data multidimensionally using the Magic Leap. That'll be my hackathon project because it seemed to fit all of the brand sponsorships and it was what is possible during that time frame. So I did that. We didn't win the hackathon. We lost the hackathon, but the little clip of what we built went viral. So then when they announced the Independent Creators Program, I applied to it. It's actually very simple. It took me, I think, maybe 5 minutes, 10 minutes to apply. But I linked and I put a little comment at the bottom because Roni, the CEO, had retweeted it. And I was like, well, Roni retweeted our clip from our hackathon project. You have to fund me. Then they funded me, and that's how it happened. No, I also took the time to build relationships with people at Magic Leap, and advocated for my idea. We made a little demo video too, and the whole thing. But yes, essentially we submitted, and then they gave us the grant, and it's to develop our networking and data environment. And this has been done. It's called C-Signal. It's out on Magic Leap now. If you do own a Magic Leap, you can download the app for free. We're putting it out there just in the world for free for you. So you can put on the headset and see your Wi-Fi network and its coverage and watch it degrade as you go too far away. It's pretty fun to do that. So.
Well,
we're running out of time, but the last question I want to drop is, so you mentioned you have an interdisciplinarity team there, and a lot of research papers show you can only be innovative if you have an interdisciplinarity team.
Yes.
Can you tell us, you hired neuroscientists for what kind of projects are they hired?
Yeah, so our senior developer actually used to be a neuroscientist. That was his whole thing, and he actually had a company that used VR to do biofeedback therapy. And he actually joined the team for the hackathon project. I wanted somebody who both knew how to develop, but also knew how to develop in a way that was empathetic to the human brain and how the human brain processed information. I find, and no offense to any developers, but sometimes you can get distance between the end user and the actual technology and the building of the technology. So the idea that he was both a developer and also not only a neuroscientist, but also a former therapist who have this great deal of empathy with humans and the way that they function. I was like, okay, well, I know you have your own thing. I know you want to do that, but like, what do I have to do? Because I really need you on my team. You are the absolute expression of everything that I believe in terms of bringing all these different things together. And so I was able to convince him to come join the team and the vision of BadVR, and I'm very thankful for that. But yes, we have a former psychologist, we have a former neuroscientist, we also have a former actor. We're Los Angeles, we're full of actors. So we got to put them to work somehow. And a former, no offense.
so all it needs is good judgment, common sense,
Yes.
and a good mix of people.
Exactly.
On a mission to democratize insight with
Yes.
BadVR. Please give a big hand to Suzanne Borders.
Thank you. Thank you.
And